Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. We got a great guest this evening. I got to hang out with him in July in Texas. Earl Grey Anderson. He's involved in MUFON. He's been on the show before, but it was quite a while ago. So I'm really excited to have him back on. A couple of announcements. We have, I got to say, the blog this week is an interesting one. Means a little something to me because now I am part-time in the same town that Betty and Barney Hill lived. I'm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And the blog this week, which I was never aware of, is the Betty Hill UFO investigator. I had not known of her investigations, and I did send the blog along to her niece, Kathleen Martin, and she loved it. I thought it was great and accurate. And so check that out over at podcastufo.com. Another great blog by Charles Lear. And again, it's Betty Hill, UFO investigator. So also, I want to bring up a couple of things. This week, this Thursday, I'm doing a very unusual Everything Else show. I kind of like history. This may even go out on my antique podcast. I'm not sure. But there was this really strange incident that a lot of people are not aware of. And so this Thursday on the Everything Else show, I'm going to do the Great Boston Molasses Flood. And what it was back in 1919 was a big storage tank with, I can't remember, I want to say over 1 million gallons of molasses in February burst. And it was a disaster. And but it's just so unusual. I thought it would make a great topic for the Everything Else show. So I'm going to have Jake, oh boy, I'm just missing his name right now. Sequoias, I believe it's something like that. He has a History Hub podcast, does Boston shows all the time. And so Jake will be joining us on Thursday night. And next week, a week from today, we have Lou Elizondo. He's going to be on. He's going to be talking about his book, Eminent. And I already have a number of questions for that. If you'd like to email me some questions for him, I will pose some of them to him. I have quite a few of them for him already as I've been reading his book. But if you want to email me some questions, that's martin@podcastufo.com. This last weekend, I was at the Incident Exeter, the Exeter UFO conference in New Hampshire. It's only 20 minutes away from where I live. Got to hang out with Peter Robbins, Lard Scranton, and a few others that were really interesting. Eric Mintel, he's a musician, a paranormal investigator. He's going to be on the show as well coming up. So anyway, I am ready to bring in our great guest all the way from the West Coast. Earl, welcome.
Hi there. How are you doing, Martin? It's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you. I really enjoyed hanging out with you and your talks that you did in Texas. I thought you did a wonderful presentation. And
I had so much fun. I enjoyed myself, that's for sure. And
I got to tell you, you are really loved by the UFO community. I could really see that by the reactions of people around you, and they really, really look up to you, and you're really highly respected, and you could really tell that. And you got that smile. I like that smile. You always have that smile. But
thank you.
And you're also.
I love what I do.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm also going to talk about you're a musician. And a nice one. And at the end of this show, with the very tail end, I got a sample of your clip. It's a partial song that I had to shorten it up a bit, but that'll be playing right at the end. And I wanted to talk to you about, and I know that Mike, he sent this to me, Mike Fioriotto. He is a book coming out on UFO symphonic. It's called The Journeys into Sound. And there's the connections between music and UFOs. And I swear there's also a connection between antiques and UFOs too, because of all these people. I'm in the antique and art business. It just seems lately that I'm being contacted by so many people in that realm as well. Maybe I should say this: UFOs are connected to everything. I don't know. Maybe. So let's talk about.
I think it's the connective tissue, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the beginning of your. Now it has to do with your mother, really. I mean, how your interest in this. Can we talk about that? I mean, for the person who didn't hear you back, what was that? How
Sure,
many?
sure,
7 years
we
ago?
can.
Yeah,
It's been a while. I think I was
yeah.
on in 2017, maybe. Well, my genesis is really here's a photo of my mom. Her name was Betty Grace Maiden.
Oh,
Back in the 1950s, my mom was one of Howard Hughes's personal secretaries. She
oh,
worked at Hughes Aircraft. I mean, he had a movie office as well because he was in film, and of course, Howard Hughes made his initial fortune by creating the better drill bit, and he kind of opened up the oil fields, and that opened things up for him to follow his true passion, which was aeronautics. And my mom, she had a job in law enforcement when she was growing up in Muscatine, Iowa. They hired her, and I'm not even sure. I mean, she was out of high school, I know, but they hired her, deputized her to be the deputy that was taking care of the drunk tank on the weekend. Nobody else wanted
oh
to do
boy.
that. So
Uh,
she would, yes, so she would go in there and she would, make sure people were fed and taken care of, and there were no problems. And I think that because of that background, it opened her up to get that job when she moved here to Los Angeles in the early 1950s. Now, this was not news. The whole family knew about my mom's background. Her best friend was Ellen Severson, who we called Aunt Ellen. I always thought of her as, as mom's other sister, but she met her at Hughes. Ellen worked for the Rand Corporation, which was a subsidiary of Hughes originally. Later on, they went on and became their own corporation, and apparently, what's interesting is that the Rand Corporation, supposedly, and what I've heard some well-founded rumors from, uh, that they had a hand in building our deep underground military facilities that became an issue, especially during the Cold War. Suddenly, we had stuff that we needed to hide, and what better place to hide things than underground? And that's what we still do. So, but anyway, it was 1965 or 63. I was 5 years old, um, and I had sat down for breakfast, uh, getting ready to go to kindergarten, and my mom sat across from me, and she started speaking to me like I was another adult. It was very strange. She spoke to me like I was another adult, which she didn't do. But I think that this was her past was weighing heavily on her. I think she was trying to be the proverbial 1960s housewife, but her background was really interesting. Working for Howard Hughes is interesting in itself. But she told me that she said, "Well, son," and I should give a little preamble to this. I was sort of born with this love for outer space. Uh, who knows where it came from? It was just that would be my safe space, as I would sort of take the Time Life books and turn to Jupiter and Saturn, early space program photos and things like that. And I would that's where I would play, with soldiers or cars or what have you. Uh, and one of my very earliest memories is I would climb up on our swing set and I would get on the monkey bars and wave and sing to the sky. And my mom, I remember her opening the kitchen window. We were in Venice, California at that time. And, who are you waving and singing to, Earl? And I didn't even have to think about it. I said, I'm waving and singing to the space people, Mom,
hmm.
which is kind of interesting. Here I am all these years later, 60 some years. I'm still essentially doing the same thing. I'm waving and singing to and about the space people. So anyway, I'm getting ready for school. I'm having my cornflakes, and Mom starts talking to me like another adult. She said, son, something that you don't know, and I kind of want you to know that my job with Howard Hughes had this very weird element to it that people are not aware of. And she told me this story where they took her out to the desert. It was herself, and it was a little security detail. And she didn't say which desert. I've been trying to figure that out for many years. I've kind of whittled it down to a few different sites, but I don't know the exact location. But she said it was the Great American Desert. There was nothing out there, but there was this shack, a concrete bunker. And she said that that they took her to this bunker, and she didn't even know why they were showing her this thing in the middle of nowhere. She didn't know if they're going to show her, machinery or a tractor. I mean, what could be there? They opened this thing up, and there was an elevator inside of the bunker. And my mom said that she got into the elevator with a couple of security guys, and she thought it would go down a floor or two, but it kept going. And apparently, my mom said that it was going at quite a clip, and she thought that it would, be a short trip, a floor or two. But later on, she said that this was a facility that was a mile under the desert. She said that the doors opened up in this elevator, and that there was a bustling city under the desert there, that there were German rocket scientists that worked there. She alluded to having known Werner von Braun, for instance. He'd come on TV on Disney. He'd be talking about the Apollo program. Yeah. And she would say, that's my friend Werner, and a very charming man. And she would talk about him. And anyway, but she said that people spent large periods of time underground in this facility, that it was a city under the desert. She said that they had, like the commissary, they had little cafes, they had a movie theater. So people were down there for long periods of time. She said they had a barber shop, but the barber could do her hair for her, as she would get her hair permed. And later on, when I would think about it, it's kind of like, well, she must have. It's not like you go down for a couple of hours and observe a facility and come back, get your hair done and come back. I mean, she must have spent some time down there. But the way she wrapped up this conversation was, she said, well, Earl, I know that you're very interested in life in outer space. And I just want you to know that we are not alone. We already know that we're not alone, that you're going to hear about UFOs, and that's a real thing. And she said that, but they're never going to tell the public, but it is a very real thing. And later on,
yeah. Did she ever say why? I mean, I have my thoughts on why we won't be told, but did she say why they would never tell us?
Well, over the years, I tried to get her to talk more. Sometimes I was more successful than other times. Usually she wouldn't. But I took her to see, for instance, in fourth grade, I went and I gave a lecture in front of my class. What do your parents do? And the kids weren't very interested in my dad's landscaping contract company. So, well, let me tell you about my mother, though. And then I went and I reiterated pretty much everything she told me at that table, like 4 years before. And the teacher called my mom in. She wanted a parent-teacher conference with my mom to see where this story came from. And, it was pretty elaborate. I told my class what I just told you, but in more detail. And I got the lecture from my mom. It's like, oh my God, how did you remember that? You were just a baby. I wasn't supposed to tell you. And, your mom could go to prison. And so I kind of clammed up about it. She was very serious. She said that she could go to prison if I talked about it. And I stopped talking about it. I stopped. But I would try to get more info from her, because it was just, it was that big 50-foot question mark that was hanging over me through my whole life. 1977, I took her to see Star Wars, and for some reason, she started talking after that movie. And she said that again, she said that Star Wars isn't far-fetched, son. It's really like that, with a different spacecraft, different races of aliens. but they're never going to tell the public. And at that point, I was old enough to ask, well, why the hell not? That's one of those eternal questions, are we alone in the universe? And she said, she brought up the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, how people had barricaded themselves up, that they reacted badly. She said, now imagine that happening on a global scale. She said that, they're afraid that people will react really badly. It could harm certain world religions, could change the way finances are dealt with. And it's just, they're never, ever going to tell the public. They're never, ever. And she, she doubled down on that, through the years. I would ask her, I'd try to get her. And now in the meantime, my mom went back into aerospace. She wound up becoming a corporate headhunter for all the, David Grush's list of the people that have the people that are the gatekeepers of this information, Lockheed, Northrop and TRW and Raytheon. And well, those were all of her contracts. She, would find people for particular jobs. I know for Rockwell International, she peopled the Rockwell Science Center here in Thousand Oaks, California, from broom sweepers up. I know because she got one friend of mine out of high school a job as a broom sweeper there. So she had her hands in that stuff again. And then she really clammed up. 1977, Star Wars, I think she was still able to talk about it. But when she went and privatized herself as a corporate headhunter, no information was coming.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I mean, it's too bad. The stigma is something that we've, had to deal with for so long and still do a little bit. I mean, I was just, I was in a group of people that would run this UAP Crossfire, and one of them just refused to have his name out there because he does, government contracts. He's a helicopter pilot. So you can't blame him. He wants to remain anonymous. But and it's too bad that stigma has to be worried about.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Well, they have everything to lose if they break their, non-disclosure agreements that they've signed, and they've taken security oaths. My mom wasn't lying. She could have gone to prison. I mean, I had one guy from the DOD, and I mean, this probably happens for you as well. Now that I'm sort of known as a UFO, expert or whatever, not that there really are experts. I don't even know where they're coming from. Are they interstellar? Are they interdimensional? Is it us from the future? Is it us from the past? Is it something that evolved next to us? I don't know.
Right.
I sort of think maybe it's a little bit of all the above, but I mean, where I've been doing this full time now for 10 years. I do like working with MUFON. And there, my mom was one of the reasons why I joined MUFON, and I kind of took to UFO investigations like a fish to water. As long as my mom was still alive, there was that chance that I might get that golden ticket, that she might just tell me everything. And she might have. I mean, she apparently left a legal pad in shorthand that was in a safe that my sister took when my mom passed away. And it was meant for me. My mom said, there's something for you in the safe. If anything ever happens to me, the safe's combination is on the bottom. Just open it up and there's something for you in there. And apparently there was just costume jewelry. There weren't any IRA accounts or anything like that in there. And my sister just threw everything in the trash, apparently, and used the safe as a gun safe, to my absolute horror and chagrin. She said that, well, there was a legal pad in there with mom's old scribbles in it, but it's probably grocery lists and work stuff. And so it just wound up going out with Monday's trash pickup. And
That's too
I
bad.
don't know, maybe she did give me the golden ticket. I know. And she couldn't talk about it while she was alive. And she would give hints, but, usually nothing. I mean, I asked her about Bob Lazar. That story came out, and I had like a magazine article or something. I was going, Mom, this sounds like one of your clients, one of the special guys that you get out to these companies. Do you ever hear this Bob Lazar guy? And she pulled her glasses down her nose and she looks at me and she says, Bob Lazar, that's not a real name. And she goes back to work. She's working on something for Lockheed or somebody, and no, she wasn't gonna go there, wasn't gonna say anything. And maybe it was in that notebook. So
Wow.
she passed away in 1999. And I knew that was the end of if I was going to find out anything about this phenomenon, I was going to have to do it myself. I'd read books about it at that point, and people would contradict each other. And, well, everybody can't be right. Everybody can't be wrong either. Who's, what? So, and I heard about MUFON, and that's how I became, I found my state director at the time. And I started getting cases. I passed the tests, read the handbook, and I've got over 1,000 cases under my belt at this point.
Wow.
Probably 1,000 up to maybe 1,300. I mean, we got a lot of cases through the ERT, which is the Experiencer Resource Team, and I'm on their executive committee. And we used to not keep track of those for MUFON and MUFON's computer filing system. So there was a good at least 200 of those cases that, on top of the 1,000 that you can see if you go into MUFON CMS, the computer management program. That's what I do. I love it.
Wow. And California, I know, has, I think the majority of sightings. Well, the population is a very high population, beautiful weather for the most part. So, but I know there's a lot of sightings. I was up in Marin County for 9 years, but when I had my UFO sighting, I lived there. My sighting was down in the Monterey area,
Wow.
Carmel Valley area. That's what got me interested in it. And so, but when I left and I'm back here, it's funny, in the town I was living in, people have contacted me from, in the Tiburon and San Rafael area and Marin County up there.
I love that area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. But I mean, there's so many sightings out there, and I'd like for you to talk about some of them, if you would,
Sure.
that you found really fascinating.
Well, what I found fascinating was, and I mean, I get all manner of reports here, and you're correct. In Southern California, particularly, we have more UFO reports here than anywhere else in the world. Some of that may be because of all the aerospace companies that we have here. It's definitely a hub for that. We have Edwards Air Force Base. You've got Plant 42, that's Lockheed's facility in Palmdale. You've got Port Hueneme, which they have a facility there. I don't know if, people know about it, but it's not advertised like the one in Palmdale is. But so we have a lot of aerospace engineers, and I get a lot of reports from aerospace engineers. One guy in one of those facilities, I'm not going to mention which one, I don't want to get him into trouble, but he does have a lot of engineers working under him. And he had a UFO sighting with his parents near Edwards when he was a kid. And in his adulthood, when he started working for Lockheed, he began having incursions into his bedroom in the middle of the night by our little gray friends with the black eyes. And I'm finding that this is not a random thing, that a lot of people, it seems, either in officialdom or connected to national security or some of the alphabet organizations that are out there, seem to be contacted. And one thing that I've noticed, well, there's a lot of black triangle sightings here. That is one thing that we have just an overabundance of. One guy was a aerospace engineer, and he was near Plant 42. He was coming back. He'd worked late. He's coming back home about 1:32 a.m., and he sees the stars being blotted out in the sky. There's very dark skies there. You can see the Milky Way, and suddenly there's a chunk of the Milky Way that he can't see, and he's looking, and it's this object. Stopped his car. He literally got out of his car to see better, and he said that a black triangle with 3 little lights, one on each corner, large light in the center, flew right over his car. He said that it was perfectly silent, that he felt discomfort when it was directly over him, sort of like a buzzing feeling over his body. And I've heard that recounted by many people.
Yes.
And he claimed to watch this thing land like a feather behind the gate of Plant 42.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, and this guy was a serious guy. And I when I'm talking to somebody like that, I want to see some ID. I want to see that, they're not pulling my leg. And no, he was exactly who he said he was. And the way that conversation ended, I told him a little bit about my mom's work. And he said, well, maybe your mom can get me onto that project, because I would love to work on that one. And I had to break it to him. I'm sorry, my mom passed away some years back.
Oh.
Maybe she could have back in the day. But I've had it wasn't even a MUFON case. One gentleman I've known for years, we were both, and we were talking about this before we went on air. He was another guy who kind of followed the band Yes around, the progressive rock band. And I was friends with Yes's bass player, Chris Squire, who we sadly lost to leukemia about 8 years ago. But he was driving his dad down the Pacific Coast Highway, showing off his new convertible. And he said that a black triangle flew right directly over their car. It was headed out towards the ocean. He said it's perfectly silent, no visible means of propulsion that he could see. And I asked him how it made him feel. And he said, well, the way it made me feel is if you gave me a team and gave me a budget, maybe I could crank one out for you in a few months.
Wow.
So there's that element to it. I do think that we have our own UFOs. I think that we've been working on it since at least the Roswell crash, 1947. I would hope that we had made some advancements towards that technology in that long period of time. I'm kind of guessing we have our own UFOs. I don't think that we can do what they can do. As my friend who saw the craft on the PCH, on the Pacific Coast Highway, he said, well, there are our UFOs and there are their UFOs, and their UFOs are very different from our UFOs.
So yeah, a lot of people are speculating that, some people say all the black triangles are ours, but you do hear a lot of people say that. And do you think here's the thing when you think about that? So do you think that they may have captured one or crashed one or whatever, reverse engineered it to get it to work? But because there are, accounts of triangles, like for instance, the Phoenix Lights in 1997, that some people thought was, several thousand feet across. And so the question, if that in particular was ours, how could they possibly house that and hide it? I mean, are there ways they can tuck these things away somewhere? I mean,
do they have hollowed out mountains? Like, I know that John Lear, said that he saw the side of a mountain open up, but John said a lot of stuff,
Yes, he did.
So I don't know. But I don't know. Apparently, well, one thing that we notice, and they're the objects that I think maybe are ours. They're usually black, which I guess we would do to, in an espionage way. It's harder to see them at night. But for instance, my chief investigator in San Diego had never seen a UFO before. And I told him, well, be careful when you start poking at this phenomenon. It pokes back. It's interactive, you know. So he was driving past the coast near San Diego. And it was maybe 2 months after he told me, oh, I've never seen a UFO. I really want to. Well, he saw these 4 black diamond-shaped objects that went racing again towards the ocean. And he said that right when they were directly in front of him, and they were maybe 200 feet away or so, they weren't real close, but they weren't real far either. He said that they began dissolving in midair, like they were using some kind of a camouflage cloaking mechanism. So maybe that's one way that we would hide them. And you know, if we had little cities under the desert, like my mom said that we did way back in the early 1960s, it sounded like this facility my mom was in was established by that time. Well, what do we have now? And you've heard the rumors, you know, there's rumors, you know, that we have, you know, the maglev trains from the Pentagon to Edwards that can go back and forth within a couple hours or faster than that. And I can't tell you, I've never seen one. I've never been in one. I've never had anybody confirm it, but I've heard lots of rumors about it. So who knows what we have hidden. But if we suddenly displayed it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a little bit of lag going on here between us. And if you would, could you check if you have any extra windows open on your computer, maybe sometimes that causes lagging.
Yeah, I've turned everything off, and I even turned off my iOS devices in the house, so I'm not sure what's going on now.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so getting back to where your mother was, what she explained was the underground city. Now, she was able to access that because of working in her job, but it was a government facility. Is that what it was, supposedly?
That I don't know. I always just kind of figured it must have been. But recently, Katie Page, we were talking about the Mount Wilson Ranch site, and they found something that looked like a bunker that had been destroyed. And Howard Hughes had his little landing strip there, and the air sock was still there, and the landing strip from way back when, same time period. And she's wondering, there was like a pit where they intentionally buried lighting fixtures and all this stuff. Who knows? Maybe, I mean, Howard Hughes, he could afford build his own facility, I suppose. But I don't know. I mean, my mom described it being massive. I mean, I think that if she had, you know, if it had just been like a small facility, she would have called it a town or something. But she said she called it City Under the Desert. And I've heard other people refer to our facilities that way as well. Apparently, there's one that's in White Sands. A couple of guys I know, their father was a mucky muck in the Air Force, and we're talking 1961. They had a take your kids to work day at the base, and he took the 2 sons that were, you know, one was 5 years old and one was 6, I think, and they had to take an elevator. There was in a little bunker. He said there was a guy with a sidearm, and that was it, and the elevator, and they went down and down in this elevator, and the doors opened up, and it was computers as far as your eyes could see, the old style mainframe computers. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do know that Werner von Braun was stationed in White Sands. Whether that was the same facility, my mom never mentioned computers, although she did know computers very well, and she didn't own a PC. She didn't have a computer at home. She learned that somewhere. She was always teaching new secretaries how to use the computer systems back in the late 70s, early 80s. So who knows? I don't know, though. But maybe Katie has found Howard. Maybe she's found the facility. Maybe it's all interconnected and honeycombed together, you know, with the maglev trains, right?
Yeah.
that I don't know. I'm just now I'm tripping on you. But Who knows? I don't know where our UFOs end and their UFOs begin. Although I will say, I mean, some of the cases that we have are very similar one to another, where you have transmedium flight from underwater to air to outer space. I don't know that we can do that. I think that surface tension is probably still an issue for us, that we can't just fly something directly into the ocean without winding up jelly on the ceiling. Although I don't know. I mean, if we've figured gravity out, maybe they've figured out how to protect people from that. But I had one case come in, a commercial pilot. He was very used to doing, he used to fly the route along the California coast. And he and his new wife and his brother-in-law were camping at Catalina, at the east side of the island, kind of a remote campsite, primitive campsite there. And about 12 midnight, he's sitting out there and he sees a circular spherical object, self-illuminated. The thing was gold in color. And this thing emerged from the water. He said he was very good at dead reckoning. He's a pilot. He said this was directly, like, right between Catalina Island and the mainland, which was like Seal Beach area, where they saw the Tic Tac. Right?
Wow.
Same area, very active area. I see the cases come in from there. But he watched this thing go into the air. He said it was 300 feet across, and it did like a sideways, crosswise dance in the air. It hung there in the air, and he's yelling at his wife and his brother-in-law to come out. Well, they come out of their tents, and this thing resubmerges. He thought that they missed the whole show, and he's trying to explain the whole thing to them. When it reemerges, it comes out again. Does the same thing, and it was massive, golden colored, no markings, no American flag, no portholes. I mean, who builds something like that? And again, it did this crosswise dance. It hung there in the air just to look at me, and then it shot off into two different directions. It split into two spheres, like mitosis. You know, there were suddenly two of them, and they both shot up out of the atmosphere, and they just stood there. And the brother-in-law brought out the binoculars, did not bring his iPhone with him. The reception is not good there, apparently, and it was left in the freaking tent. And that's usually, you know, that's what happens. Why would this pilot go on record and talk about this? You know that if this gets out and his name gets out, he could be grounded. He could be flying a desk for the rest of his career. Right. But it was very important to him. He wanted somebody to know about this. And I might have questioned it more, except, you know, all three went on record that saw it. And I have similar cases. I mean, I had a boat captain with a fishing boat where his crew, they were huddled and afraid, like they were seeing Jehovah, you know, the same thing. It was like a second moon was in the sky, but it was hovering right over their tuna boat. And the guys were literally cowering on the deck. They were afraid. It was huge. And same thing, they saw this thing shoot off. And that guy would talk, you know, I had to call up the company that he worked for to get a hold of him. He wasn't going to give his own phone number. So I know it was a fishing company, you know, it was, he was who he said he was. And very, very afraid to talk about it, even on, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe he has reason to be afraid to talk about it. Yeah. But a lot of activity off the coast here. Right.
That one in particular, did that come out of the water?
Yes.
Wow. So two of them out of the water. That's
they're transmedium.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know that we can do that. Maybe, but and you have a 300-foot across object. That doesn't sound like a drone of any kind to me. That sounds like something that would be piloted. I mean, maybe I'm being anthropomorphic in my presuppositions there. Maybe they like to create golden 300-foot spheres as observation drones, but I don't know.
Do you know what year that was approximately?
It was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
It was 2 years after the fact, when he was his wife had they'd had a baby recently, and he was on leave from work, and that's when he put his report in.
Now, in the mid 60s, I had someone contact me from Oakland. He lived in Oakland, and he went to school there. In the mid 60s, there was a gold object. It was a gold structured object. He said it was so bright with the sun glinting off of it that he had to turn away, and
Wow.
his whole, school people, other people at his school saw it out in the playground when they're out on the playground. So you occasionally hear about the golden ones. And there was another one, I want to say, in South America that was gold as well, but you don't hear a lot of the cases where there's the gold.
I've seen one UFO, and it was an ugly UFO. Leave it to me to see a interstellar garbage scow, but it was all mine. I think I was, targeted. Well, I wasn't very. Last time we spoke, I wasn't talking about my own experience very much, but my wife and myself, we had a visitation like almost 10 years ago, and it was when I joined MUFON. I had been taking cases for about maybe 4 to 6 months at the time, and I was trying that CE5 thing, but it wasn't good enough for me to just see a little light in the sky. I was sending out a meditative message. I want to meet you guys. I didn't designate who. It could have been reptilians getting it. It could have been anybody. And we had an incursion into our bedroom with the little gray guys, and they paralyzed me. I got the whole treatment, and the room flooded with blue light. The sounds, external sounds from the house, you couldn't hear. The Oz effect was fully in play, where time seemed strange. Sounds were muffled. We had crickets in the rafters. Normally, we had a concerto going on up there. Their old house. Well, the crickets were perfectly silent, and then this very dramatic thing happened where it was, for lack of better expression for it, I think that they opened something like a portal or a wormhole up, and in they came, and I was scared to death. And my wife thought that I had lost my mind. She slept through the whole thing, or they had her sleep through the whole thing. And I was embarrassed, because I was screaming and yelling about aliens coming into the room. And her attitude was, oh my God, you've joined this crazy outfit, this MUFON thing, and now you're yelling about aliens. And 2 nights later, she went through the exact same thing. She was the one waking me up and shaking me. And she was mad. That was her first reaction. She was angry. It was like, oh my God, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us alone. I had signed up for this. 2 nights after that, we both woke up. Again, there was that blue glow in our room. It was a light with no source. Quietude again, and but this time there was light coming from the Venetian blinds. It was just, and I pulled them up. She's on the left-hand side, I'm on the right, and it was like God was shining a spotlight on our backyard. It was not a police helicopter. That would be the first thing I'd think of. No sound. It was like a laser light, not like your normal spotlight. It's like the light didn't diffuse on the ends of things. It was, you could see every little shadow of every little leaf. It was like it was just perfect silhouette of it cut out in shadow on the ground. And we got my wife and I got a telepathic message. No communication from these guys until the third night. And the third night, the communication we got was either a cosmic joke or a lie. I like to think of it as a joke. They were ribbing me or messing with me, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm thinking, is it a porch light? Is it just grasping for straws? And my wife and I heard at the same time in our heads, don't worry, it's just the neighbor's porch light. And we both busted up. We were laughing so hard. And we said in unison, my wife and I, is like, that's no blankety blank porch light.
Yeah. Here's someone that had he was writing this about the same time you were talking about it. He says that he had beams of blue light around his house twice in 2012, both times 3 a.m.
They do that. They do that. I call it God's spotlight. I needed a term for it because I have so many cases come in like that. One young woman in Desert Hot Springs had a similar thing happen to her, middle of nowhere. And it seems like it's almost like an initiation into contact. She started having visitations after that. At one point, she found her rings crushed against her finger, like she had to go to a jeweler to get them, off of her fingers, like something had gone wrong, or somehow they had crushed her rings against her fingers. But it is a personal phenomenon. For a long time, I was encouraged to not talk about this because MUFON is kind of, we're still very nuts and bolts about this stuff. I mean, we're, you can't technically use a scientific method. You can't repeat an experiment, right? But you can be scientific about it. And plus, I was afraid of the ridicule factor. I mean, people don't necessarily know my work or know how reliable of a source I am. But I feel like I am supposed to tell people what happened. I did tell all my field investigators. We mentor our people when we have a new field investigator, and I would take them aside and kind of whisper, just for your own edification, and a little caveat that this phenomenon, when you poke at it, it pokes back. It's interactive.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if you see a UFO or if you have, experienced beings, because it happens. And I've seen it happen to a lot of my people that work under me at MUFON. That is a thing.
When you had your experience, would you say that you felt like you were abducted or just observed or examined?
They did a house call. As far as I know, they didn't take me anywhere. So they apparently still do house calls. Our doctors don't, but they do, apparently. They may have taken me somewhere, but I don't have any recollection of that. I've never been hypnotically regressed. I might do it someday just in case I'm forgetting something like that. But the time all seems to be, fit what I remember, that they came in, they took blood from me, they took energy from me, which maybe was the same thing as taking blood. They took a lot of blood to the point where it scared me. I thought that they were going to exsanguinate me like a cow that they find, one of the cows they find out near Skinwalker Ranch or something.
Yeah.
But no, they apparently wanted my DNA, and they took it, and out they went the same way they came in. No communication.
You knew this comment was going to happen, right?
And it's from Ingrid Cold. I heard all about you too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, hey, I guess I have to ask you this. When this happened to you, did you feel, people always talk about implants. That's the first question. The second part of that is, do you and your wife talk about it now?
Yeah, we do.
And
it's hard for her to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm more comfortable with it than she is. But if somebody starts saying stuff against the UFO phenomena or starts laughing and rolling their eyes, she's like Mama Lion right there. And she'll tell them, no, this is real. And
yeah,
you're very short-sighted making fun of this phenomenon that astronauts, politicians, and doctors and scientists and the caliber of people that are, have had the same experience that I'm recounting to you right now is kind of incredible. But a lot of us have had contact. It is a thing. And maybe this is how they do disclosure. We were talking about that before we went on air too. It's like, who is going to do disclosure? We don't have a Walter Cronkite anymore, right? Nobody's going to believe any politician that goes up. They're going to say they're trying to change the subject, not look at the economy or something. But if our visitors wanted to disclose worldwide, they could do it. they're perfectly capable of doing that.
Sure.
But I think that they sort of like the scenario that they have. It's kind of, and I heard Lou Elizondo, and I'm so thrilled you're going to have him on next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
But I heard him say that the abduction program that our visitors have is really no different than the way that we would treat a pride of lions that we were studying in the jungle. You know, you hover over them with a helicopter, you tranquilize them, you tag them, and you keep track of them, and then maybe you do it again a year later, and it seems like that's the pattern. So
right. You know, I got to tell you, if I had what you are describing, what happened to you, I would be really scared to talk about it myself. I would, you know, I guess
it took
I'd
me
be
a
scared,
while, Martin.
even doing
me.
this, you know, doing the show, I would be scared that I'd be totally judged. And, but anyway, I don't know if I would do it. I mean, I had what I consider some type of poltergeist encounter. I swore that I would never tell anyone, and I've told it a couple times already. So, you know, I mean,
talking about it now, you know.
But yeah, that's right. But as you get older, I think too, for myself, you care less and less what, you know, people think about you, or at least I should say I do. Yeah,
I don't care anymore. I mean, this happened to me. It happened to my wife, and the people that I speak with that have gone through the same thing. I hear the similar stories so often, and so many of the details and markers are similar, that I can even kind of see the psychology of our visitors. And that's why I think it was kind of a joke when they said it's the neighbor's porch light.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so absurd. It made us laugh, but it's a personal phenomenon. And I'm comfortable talking about it. I wasn't last time I was on your show. I wasn't talking about that. But
yeah,
I do
know. I understand. And, you know, I mean, what do you suppose, we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes here left, but what would you suppose in your thoughts of what they might want when, you know, I mean, what would they want with you, I guess? You know,
I think that family,
like experimenting.
It runs in families are interested in certain bloodlines. My mom had what I consider a contact incident when she was 16 with an intelligent fireball, like a Foo Fighter. She referred to it as ball lightning, but it wasn't ball lightning. It was, you know, her experience lasted like 7-8 minutes. And this thing came into their screened-in porch. It looked at her sister, went in front of my mom, went back out through the screen, and my mom ran after it into the middle of the neighbor's cornfield. And it waited for her like a puppy dog. Ball lightning doesn't do that. It waited till she was right under it, and then it popped like a soap bubble. So I guess it runs in the family. You know?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So your show is on this KGRA network.
MUFON
right after
Contact
this one.
Radio is going to be right after.
Radio, and that's coming right up here on KGRA Radio. So it's been a real pleasure, Earl. The time always flies by with you. And
Sure
what
does.
we're going to do here is I'm going to play your, it's a song called Seventh Sister. I believe that's what it's called. And I'm just playing a fraction of it. I'm only playing 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it. But the full song is in the show notes for anyone that listens to the audio show here. And it's also down in the text below in YouTube. So thank you so much, Earl.
Thank you, Martin.
All right. And we'll be talking soon. Take care. All right, everyone. So don't forget this week we have coming up just on Thursday night, the molasses disaster in Boston. Really very interesting. If you like history, you're going to like that podcast. And next week we have Lou Elizondo. And here's the song right here by Earl, a great musician and singer. Here it goes.
Scintillas in the stream, hoping for what's true. over the Puget Sound. Berenice's hair drapes the horizon to where is my lucky star tonight? Seventh sister of the Pleiades walks in beauty like the night. Oh, that is bed.